Bookshops and Bonedust is one of my personally most anticipated sequels of recent memory due to my fond love of the book. It is a sequel, or prequel actually, to Legends and Lattes. Now, Bookshops and Bonedust, I feel like had a bit of a can we catch lightning in a bottle twice aura around it.
You're special.
Not because Legends and Lattes is like one of the greatest books of all time, but because it came out at a point where we as a fantasy audience were like perfectly keyed for it. Travis has even addressed this in interviews where he said like, yeah, because of what was going on with the shutdown and just the tension in the air, Legends and Lattes hit the fantasy community like a haymaker. It became an absolute runaway success, but now, these years on, is a sequel to it in a similar style as Welcome. Add that on top of just the difficulty of writing a sequel to a successful book, and Bookshops and Bonedust was something that was just immediately high on my radar from the second it was announced. I often get interested not just in like the story of the sequel, but also the around the book stuff. I don't know, I'm a nerd. Anyway, I can't exactly place why I felt the need to do this, but I came into this book with tampered expectations. And I feel like that was to its benefit, because I don't feel like I'm as keyed for a Legends and Lattes book right now. I feel like it did serve a specific purpose in time and is a prequel or sequel necessary, and is the raw storytelling talent and cozy vibes that Travis Baldree is able to bring to the table enough to make his fans enjoy this sequel. Well, let's go ahead and answer that question, y'all, you little silly gooses. That's why you're here.
Come with me.
I am happy to say that if you are looking for a book that, as the cover reads, hits like a warm hug, Bookshops and Bonedust is undeniably successful at that. Travis Baldree, with his charmingly blunt characterization, is wildly successful at crafting a smaller town city for our protagonist Viv to explore. Now, we as readers know, because this is a prequel to Legends and Lattes, this character isn't in the exact right moment of their life to settle down and open up a shop, but we are seeing the beginnings of that life path in Viv's head begin to form in Bookshops and Bonedust, and keeping it spoiler-free, that kind of is the grander narrative here, at least for the story of the character herself. And Travis Baldree as an author, for me, is a bit confusing to pin down entirely, because he certainly does not use purple prose here. In fact, there's something to the way he tells you a story that inevitably makes you feel like it's your parent in your childhood, like reading you a fantasy book. I think that's a large part of the source of that hug feeling coming in. It pulls at nostalgia in multiple ways, not just the tone of the actual story itself. Yet there is a restriction to that storytelling type, to Legends and Lattes and Bookshops and Bonedust, that I don't see it fully overcoming in this second entry. I almost wish it was a bit more purple, because there are certain lines, certain scenes in the book that want to pull me in further as a reader, but due to the prose, I don't think I got as invested in Bookshop and Bonedust as I could have. And I'm wondering now, because I'm not so in need of something so warm and cozy and fantasy at this point in my life, if I would still get as pulled into Legends and Lattes. I'd have to reread it to know. Because I think we all thrust ourselves into this story, and the big burden of the sequel is to pull us all back into the world. It's just contrasted with what I'm currently reading outside of this, Sun Eater. I'm very much so feeling myself not as drawn into the actual story here, and I'm looking for a fix for that as a reader, but I'm still having a really good time, and it is an incredibly digestible read, partially probably due to the prose being in this style that's a bit more elementary without ever feeling dumbed down at all.
Deceptively simple, yet elegant.
So while I was reading Bookshops and Bonedust, the overall melody and lull of the storytelling definitely was there. I just found myself looking for that magic that absolutely struck with Legends and Lattes, kind of as a fictional story, meeting what so many of us were thirsting for at that time. I'm happy to say though, I found a different magic, and that is just Travis Baldree's ability to accurately portray small town life. I have lived in big cities, but I was born and raised in a small town, Catharpin, Virginia. And the way people treated outsiders or talked with each other, I found so accurately reflected here. With this being the genre that it is, of course, characters are overly nice and helpful from beginning to end. But on top of that, it's like as accurate as Stephen King will write like a blue-collar person, Travis Baldree writes a wholesome small-town person. And there's an abundance of these small magics within this book that Travis does such a great job of capturing. Like the joy of recommending someone a book as a bookshop owner must feel. He is able to convey that in small interactions between characters you inevitably care so much about vividly. So the way I did find myself the most drawn into this story is just the existence of this city and a somewhat of a mystery angle building in throughout this story. It's never as direct as something like a Hellbent, but the story definitely has an undertone of some kind of ticking clock element. We know there's going to be a convergence of events that will result in the climax, but in the Legends and Lattes / Bookshops and Bonedust world, just how action-y can that be? Surprisingly kind of action-y, but not betraying the overall tone of the story. The balance of this, although, I feel suffers the most when it comes to the momentum of the story. I found my mind wandering when reading this book, and often wondering, okay, when is this scene going to lead to the payoff for this thing that we know has to pay off at some point? And there were entire chapters that, while they were cute and contained fun, adorable animals, kind of just slid by the narrative without feeling as appropriate as I found most scenes within Legends and Lattes to feel. I know it's maybe a bit counterintuitive for a Legends and Lattes book to be like, oh, I'd like some more momentum here. But when you combine what feels like, at least to my recollection, an even slower pace than what we got in Legends and Lattes, a suddenly more action-packed finale is almost jarring, though it's well executed overall, and my god, does Travis Baldree know how to end a book. I remember Legends and Lattes ending, leaving me with a very distinct positive feeling, and Bookshops and Bonedust, I felt all kinds of things, yet what permeated a more complex set of emotions for me was just a warm, fuzzy joy, happy at seeing these characters grow and gain new experiences, and because of this being a prequel, knowing where the story is headed. I think Travis Baldree is an incredibly good emotional writer, understands how to set stakes that are still very enticing in an overall low stakes narrative. It's like the difference between like a Spider-Man action sequence in a story where he's like shooting through the building all fast trying to get out the building before something explodes, versus like him just slowly hanging out, going from web to web in the city. Does that make sense at all?
No, not at all.
Funnily enough though, I remember one of my criticisms of Legends and Lattes is like, hey, if you're putting lattes in the title, I expect coffee porn. Like, write me in some serious coffee scenes with, oh, so much detail about like the pores and beans, the interesting, enticing stuff about that, just to, I don't know, live up to a title in a sense. I just expected it more. Shoot me. Bookshops and Bonedust though, there is book porn in the, oh, it's just writing about enjoying books way, and also there is book porn. Kind of like a funny reflection on how like the romantasy angle in our own world is getting so much more popular. Our characters are talking about discussing romantasy here in such a successful, wholesome way. I love how funny these characters can be and how great the representation is as well. Goddamn, even the epilogue just was phenomenal. I loved reading the epilogue of this story because of what it meant. I will say though, I am pretty sure Travis did not know the exact details of this story before writing Legends and Lattes. Otherwise, some things could have been referenced and written in, maybe more than there was. I guess I'm saying don't just expect this to be a mapped out like Malazan-esque epic if we're going to continue to be getting a fuller, longer Legends and Lattes series. They're going to be self-contained, kind of just fun stories and not weaving this grand, wider mythos tapestry. Overall, for Bookshops and Bonedust, I'm happy. I'm not as like wow as I was with Legends and Lattes, but it's a solid book and a solid 7 out of 10. I think the biggest success here is I do leave a sequel of a book I thought really didn't need a sequel necessarily, wanting more. I now want a third Legends and Lattes book. Legends and Lattes need a series. With this being such a recent release though, I'm not going to do a spoiler section. I am just going to say thank you everyone so much who's already been a part of the new merch drop we're doing here at the channel. If you look in the shelf below, you'll notice we brought back the 10 most popular designs throughout the year because of how many people were messaging us like, hey, I just wasn't able to afford it then, but I want to go ahead and pick one up now. So if you'd like to get a piece of merch you missed dropped in 2023, we will have the 10 most popular designs right down there. And of course, patrons get a discount code, and huge Thank you to patrons right now. YouTube ad revenue over the last like year and some change has been just absolutely awful in terms of just an overall downward trend. So despite the channel doing pretty well this year, it's still getting a little bit tighter from AdSense. So really, all the patrons, even just $1 a month to watch with an ad blocker guilt free, you guys always keep me totally good in that sense. So I just want to say a big shout out and thank you to you all, and like and subscribe if you have not already. Hit the Patreon if you want to support what I do here, and let me know what book you want to see me review next in the comments down below. Goodbye!